Welcome to Financially Speaking, brought to you by Buska Retirement Solutions and its affiliate firms. We offer retirement, tax, and legacy planning from a dedicated family-built team. In this episode, we'll discuss the essentials of formal succession planning and risk mitigation, and the barriers that women face to saving money and how to overcome them. And now for our weekly question and answer segment.
Welcome back to Financially Speaking. I'm with Cole Bruner and Logan Waller from Buska Retirement Solutions to talk about ensuring your business survives in good hands through strong succession planning. Gentlemen, thanks for joining today.
Of course.
We talked a little bit about, we had a business owners episode a while ago, and how many people you guys run across with that have bigger businesses, medium-sized businesses, smaller businesses, hobby businesses. So excited about today's topic. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about succession planning and why is that critical for a business's long-term future?
Well, I think any business needs to know what happens to the business, to the employees, to the customers, all of the like, in the event that the person leading that company, aka the owner in many cases, is for whatever reason removed from the equation. In comparison for our business, we have to have a business disaster and continuity plan that explains what happens if our office were to, all of a sudden not be habitable anymore, or what happens if leadership were to pass away or be incapacitated or anything along those lines. It really not only provides you with clarity and certainty in terms of what things you have to prepare for in terms of your business, but also, especially if you have employees, certainly it's going to provide them with a little bit more peace of mind and confidence knowing what does happen if all of the sudden worst comes to worst and that person who's been our, leader, so to speak, was no longer there to lead.
Right.
What are the steps? Are there insurance policies that we should have in place for those types of risks? All of those different types of things are questions that really need to be answered, but unfortunately, nobody likes to think about their demise.
More of a discussion.
Right? As we've talked about in our estate planning segments and all of those types of things, it's an easy thing to procrastinate, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I would just, to piggyback off of that, is that's what most people think of, because that's true. We need that in the succession plan.
Right.
It's also about leading up to when the owner, the main person's moving on. So what are you doing with current employees? Are you hiring people that you could see eventually with the right training, right career setup, go into that next role, and really preparing for that stuff too. Give them proper training, let them go to seminars, do the things that's going to help the business function now, and then also after that ownership moves on.
And in most successful businesses, the person's committed to that, which they're passionate about. It's why it got successful. Mm-hmm. The employees, all those things are one thing, but eventually you exit a business, right? It could be on not your terms, could be on your terms. Mm-hmm. Do you see that a lot of business owners that business is their largest asset that they have? And talk a little bit about how that aligns with net worth versus kind of investable assets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people in our area, a lot of clients we're sitting down with do start their own small businesses, whether it's a restaurant or some type of manufacturing company or whatever industries we have in the area. Yeah. And that is true what you said. It's a lot of the times their biggest asset. And then it comes to the decision, are we handing this off to the kids and how are we doing it when we don't want to work anymore, but we have to still pay for our bills and all that. Right. So how do you sell the asset, or what's the decisions on if you need to sell and how do you pay for those things? So it really helps to sit down with the right people, a financial services professional, to make sure you're growing the assets the right way with 401k plans or whatever it may be. But then there's also pulling in CPAs, insurance folks and professionals to really have all those things in place to help out with that.
Right. Well, and determine what's it worth.
Right.
You know, obviously something is only worth what someone is willing to pay for it, as they say, right? and so in terms of business valuation, when you are looking at succession planning and whether it be transitioning a business to the kids or selling it outright to an outside party or being acquired by a larger company or whatever it might be, you want to make sure that you're getting a good value for the business that you've created. I mean, that's your blood, sweat, and tears that you pumped into it for how long, that now you are transitioning to someone else and you want to make sure that you're paid adequately for it. And so Logan's hit the nail on the head. You want to work with multiple professionals. You want to get those people together to figure out what is this business really worth?
Right.
And what would I expect to sell it for in the event that I were to transition it to, maybe a family member, because that might not necessarily be top dollar per se. We might give the kids a little discount possibly.
Right. They might be able to pay for it full value anyway.
Well, true, exactly, absolutely. Yeah. And then how do you go about doing that? Is it an outright sale? Is it, a payment made over a period of time? All those different things have to be figured out and worked out because obviously the business also has to be able to afford to support that transition as well. So I think that there's a lot of things that need to be figured out, but I think it begins with getting those professionals in your corner to have those conversations to figure out what areas you might be lacking.
What is the plan, right? Because a lot of business owners will say, well, if they have kids, well, my kids will take it over.
Right.
Well, what does that mean? Somebody's got to buy it from you. You've got a retirement to live also.
And the kids have to be interested in it.
Kids have to be interested in it, which we'll get to that part too. What key elements should every succession plan include? What are the things that you should do?
Well, there's a variety of them. I think ultimately, in terms of succession planning, having written documentation of what that plan really is, or at least beginning to put together the initial framework of what you would like that to look like, whether it be transitioning to, a key employee or, looking to recruit a key employee that could potentially be that succession plan, or having conversations with the kids to figure out what is that level of interest. Right. Is anybody thinking they might want to go down that path and kind of eventually be the succession plan of the business? But I think having documentation in writing is really, really important. And really, that kind of plays right into your estate plan. In most cases, a business owner's succession plan is technically part of their estate plan.
Just another asset.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess I look at it in my own situation. I have ownership in a multitude of different businesses, and my estate plan, my trust, indicates what happens with my ownership interest in those various
just like the house,
entities.
a car, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say on top of that too, what a lot of people forget about as their business is growing, adjusting that succession plan with the growth of the company to make sure that you're covering all the bases of that growth. With more products being sold, well, you might need more administrative workers to help manage those books or whatever it may be, right? So it's continuing to update with the growth of your business too, and reviewing that succession plan and having the plan really ahead of time.
Starting somewhere.
Right. And you talked a little bit about, do the kids have interest? And let's assume kids are in it, or other internal people. If a person has a job there, I guess the question is, they like working there, but do they want to be you as a business owner?
Yep.
What can a person do to prepare an internal or external person for that succession? What do you do ahead of time?
Well, I think sharing with them what those responsibilities really look like.
Yeah, what is it? What do you do?
Right. From someone else's perspective, looking at, even another role within the company, whether it be, maybe somebody that's in a supervisory role or a management role, they still might not be intimately familiar with what that head of the company, so to speak, the president, the leader, whatever their title is, the person that's ultimately responsible for the day-to-day operation of the business. They might not have any clue what goes into that particular position. They may have some assumptions on certain things, but I think really sitting down and going through what are those day-to-day responsibilities, what are the primary focuses of that particular role, and kind of putting together an outline of what that position really entails.
Right.
Can really be eye-opening for someone that is considering the possibility of some sort of transition or acquisition of the leadership of that company. All of those different things are things that should be discussed and outlined and really, kind of putting in writing so we have something to refer back to, kind of like not necessarily job description per se, but basically, along those same lines.
A playbook.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Let's take a quick break here. And after that break, we're going to come back.
Sure.
We'll explore buy-sell agreements. We'll explore leadership transitions and family dynamics. That's always a sticky one. So
of course.
Keep watching. We'll be back after the break.
Do you have a plan for how your assets will be handled after you're gone? Without one, the state could end up making life's most important decisions for your family. Through our partnership with the State Guru, we make a estate planning process simple and affordable, offering wills, powers of attorney, and revocable trusts. On average, our service costs 70% less than the traditional estate attorney fees. and you may even qualify for free financial and healthcare power of attorneys. Call our office today to get started.
And now back to our weekly question and answer segment.
Before the break, we discussed the essentials of formal succession planning and risk mitigation. Now let's continue that on here.
Sure.
So we talked about family dynamics at the end of the last break here.
Yeah.
So how do businesses balance family leadership with professional management? You got kids in the business. You got maybe another guy who's not a kid who is the successor.
Sure.
How do you balance all that?
Well, I think it's based on the business itself. Ultimately, determining roles and responsibilities is obviously a great place to begin. Who's responsible for what, and kind of putting that down in terms. I hate to kind of beat the dead horse, so to speak, but I think having that stuff in writing is really important.
Right.
Granted, talk is great, and having conversations is great, and all of that kind of stuff. But actually documenting what that looks like, so it's something that can be referred back to. I think it also holds accountability. All of those types of things can really be can get blurred with family involved, and so having it clearly outlined, defined, having it something that can be referred back to. I think those are all really great places to begin in that regard.
Yeah, and I think another thing is trying your best to keep business at business and family at home, right? The home and business life. And that's really tough, especially if you're working with a partner or something like that.
Yeah.
So I've seen business owners say like, hey, now we can talk about business.
Right.
Or, hey, let's table this when we get home. So having those little just key times where you're like, okay, we can't talk
This isn't
about this.
business time.
Yep.
Having little sayings to keep you
And
in
for a
the
lot of
mindset.
closely held family businesses, their business is their life. It's one and the same. It's a
This
good
is
part
true.
of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's always a term thrown around in business and succession planning with a buy-sell. We need a buy-sell agreement. What is it, and why does one use one?
Ultimately, a buy-sell agreement is simply a document of how the business eventually transitions. I look at myself being in business with my mom for the last almost 19 years, and one of the first legal documents that we put together as we really started to kind of create the documentation of the business succession and leadership responsibilities and all of those different things was the buy-sell agreement. And basically, it's just a legal document that explains what happens to the business in the event that we decide we no longer want to be in partnership with each other. What happens if someone passes away? What happens if someone retires? What does that look like? It encompasses valuation calculation models and different things like that. But it is also a document that requires updating periodically. Sometimes those valuation models no longer make sense based on changing dynamics in your business or what have you, or maybe, responsibilities have shifted and that shifts, kind of how the payouts are done to individuals. And sometimes it also is backed up by some sort of insurance policy.
You got to fund it.
Yeah,
when it's time to
exactly.
buy. Yeah.
Yep. So if something happened unexpectedly, if there's other people that need to be paid out a portion of that ownership percentage, having a life insurance policy in place that facilitates that, so it's not coming out of the company's finances,
right,
but more out of a policy that the company owns, can provide a little bit more flexibility in the event that something happened unexpectedly. So basically, legal document that indicates what's going to happen with the company under all of those various different circumstances is probably the easiest way to understand what the buy-sell agreement was.
Right, and I knew two guys that had a business, both married, and they had one that was, if something happened to you, I don't necessarily, your wife hasn't been involved, I don't welcome her input, but I don't need her in here.
Correct.
And the wife said, good, because I don't want to be in there.
Yeah.
Give me the money and I'm gone,
Exactly.
basically. And so that was their exercise to walk through it.
Yeah.
So that explains the buy-sell pretty good. What about you hear things like key person and you mentioned valuation, like what are these other things and what's important to have in these documents?
Sure.
Yeah, it's just like looking at a retirement plan, what all your assets are, where they sit, what liquidation you have, what the growth is, all that, similar to your business. How much is your business worth? Do you have trucks that you have your employees use? Is there cell phones that you give your employees? Do you have the building? So really putting all that together using a combination of different professionals, a CPA that can, help out with all the tax things with that, getting a lawyer involved for some of those different legal documents you want, like the buy and sell.
Yeah.
So it's really just keeping up to date with your, let's say, GDP of your business in a way, right?
Right.
So having those type of things come in can really just help you better on when you are ready to sell and updating that.
Well, and one of the other things that we talk a lot about, especially working in the financial and insurance world, right, is, key person. You mentioned that key person insurance. A lot of businesses have one person, maybe it's a salesperson or whatever it might be, engineer, somebody that's very important to that business. They're an integral part of the business's success. And if they were to be unexpectedly removed from that equation, it would cause the business financial harm. And so there are life insurance policies, specifically referred to as key person life insurance, that you can purchase from the business's standpoint because the business has to have insurable interest in the person, obviously. And so in this case, being that person is a very important part of the business's revenue generating and operations and all of those different types of things, the business can then obtain a life insurance policy on that person's life where it pays out either to the loved ones of the person or more commonly in key person to the business to allow them to go out and recruit that replacement, whatever it might be. To deal with the financial difficulty that would come into play with that person being removed from the equation. So there are all sorts of different things that we should be considering as business owners as potential complements to our business itself to make sure that we're covering ourselves from a variety of different risks because there's lots of risks out there that we face.
That's for sure. I suppose if you had one good, solid employee, you might need to outsource that thing if something happened to them or hire two people or however that may be.
Yeah, and you want to have money to do that.
What should someone do if they've got a business, they haven't got into it? Who, assuming you guys would be their first call, what happens from there?
Really depends. It starts out with the industry you're in, right? So if you have an ice cream shop, that's going to be a different type of outcome or plan when you want to transition it versus a huge plant where you're manufacturing windows or something, right? So it really starts with the industry and how you want to advance in that industry and make sure you have all the T's crossed, I's dot and all that. But sitting down and getting an evaluation of what the company's worth. And creating, you always hear, where would you want to be in 5 years or 10 years? So it's really just sitting down and starting to ask those questions maybe you've thought about when you're daydreaming in between all the spinning plates you have in the business that you're trying to do as an owner. But that's really a good starting point is sitting down and having someone challenge you on those questions to start to think about it and write it down.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a lot of people forget about that.
Most definitely.
Good points. So if you do have a business and you're worried about succession planning, not only have guys like this dealt with it and their whole firm dealt with it, from lots of different clients they have, but they've also dealt with it themselves there. So if you don't know where to start, like we talked about, the first step is just getting started. So
take a step, right?
Exactly right. So give Buska Retirement Solutions a call. They set up, have a discussion with them. And then you guys have networks of CPAs and attorneys and things to refer people to as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to build that network yourself. I mean, ultimately, if you find the right professional and that professional has a network of affiliations, that can make your life a little bit easier also.
Great. So if you don't have a first step, make them your first step. Thanks for joining us today.
At Buska, our goal is to streamline the retirement planning process to help you move towards a successful retirement with confidence and ease. Through our 3 companies, we provide a comprehensive approach to planning your future. We work closely with you to create a personalized, comprehensive retirement plan that reflects your unique goals and financial situation. Our team integrates investment management, income planning, tax strategies, estate planning, health insurance, and Medicare planning all under one roof. That means fewer appointments, less stress, and more clarity as you prepare for life's next chapter. Whether you're just starting to think about retirement or looking for a second opinion on your current plan, we're here to help you feel more confident about your financial future. Call us today at 715-355-4445 or visit retirewithbuska.com to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation consultation. Let's make retirement planning easier together.
And now our Financially Speaking Weekly Desk segment.
Welcome back to Financially Speaking. I'm Kaylee Berenson from Buska Retirement Solutions and Buska Wealth Management, and joining me today is my mom, Sue Buska. Today, my mom and I are going to be talking about barriers that women face around saving money and how to overcome them.
That's right. Earning less money, having to take time off, and living longer are all things that can make it harder for women to save. Now, there was an article in Yahoo Finance entitled 5 Barriers Women Face to Saving Money and How to Overcome Them, and it covers this issue thoroughly.
Well, before we get started, a quick note for our viewers. Both my mom and I are seasoned financial services professionals, but for today's purposes, I'm going to be taking the role of the curious listener, and my mom will be offering her insights. Should we dive in?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, the gender pay gap is one of the reasons it is harder for women to save for retirement. So, Mom, tell our audience what the gender pay gap is exactly.
Well, the gender pay gap refers to the fact that, on average, women make about 85% of what men make.
So some people argue that this is because women choose lower paying professions. Do you think that that's true?
Well, it may be true to some degree, but according to the American Bar Association, a majority of law firm associates are women. And the EEOC says 29.3% of STEM workers are women. And the Association of American Medical Colleagues say that the share of women who are physicians rose 97% between 2004 and 2022. So there are women in high-paying jobs. Women going into lower-paying professions could be part of the picture, but I don't think it's the whole picture.
Well, that tracks. And after all, women are more likely to experience career interruptions.
Well, that's right. And that's actually the next item on the list, because women are more likely to step away from the workforce to take care of children or elderly parents. And those are important things to do, but taking time away from work to do it can have a domino effect also on your finances.
So what can our viewers do to overcome some of these gender pay gap issues?
Well, advocate for yourself. When you go into a meeting with your boss to negotiate a raise, arm yourself with facts. Show them what the market rate is for positions like yours and remind them of what you bring to the table.
I can just hear some of our viewers cringing because that does sound intimidating.
Sure, pushing for a raise can be a scary thing to do, but it can also help you close that gender pay gap.
And what about career interruptions? How can people avoid the potential financial losses that can accompany caregiving responsibilities?
Well, this is harder, but you can push for flexible time off policies, paid leave, or childcare subsidies, and you may be able to put yourself in a better position.
All right, so let's move on to another issue that makes it harder for women to save: longer life expectancies.
Well, this is such an important topic because 65% of women worry that they will outlive their savings, and the solution is to start saving as soon as possible.
Well, the sooner that you start saving, the longer that your money has to earn those compounding returns.
Well, that's exactly right.
And if you take advantage of those matches that your employer offers, you'll just compound and earn faster.
That's right.
What if somebody tells you that they had a couple of decades to go before they had to start saving for their retirement?
Well, first off, I would say don't waste time with regret. Beating yourself up will not fill your 401k. And the important thing is to start saving now.
Are there any savings that are better than no savings?
Well, even if you're 5 years from retirement, you can accumulate some savings. Is it ideal? No, probably not, but it's better than nothing. And remember to adjust your savings as your financial circumstances change. Now, are you making more money? Increase your retirement account contributions accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely, because every percentage really does help, and it can increase, that return on exponential growth.
That's exactly right.
Well, let's move on to the pink tax. Mom, tell us what the pink tax is.
Well, the pink tax refers to products that cost more, simply because they're specifically made for women. And a good example of this is razor blades. If they're designed for women, they tend to cost more.
Well, that doesn't seem very fair.
Well, it definitely is unfair, but women can save money by finding generic versions of these products and see how much you can save by choosing the unisex or men's version.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they should consider putting that money that you save into some interest-bearing accounts then.
That's right.
Well, we're coming to the end of this segment. And what's the last thing that stands in the way of women's savings, Mom?
Well, student loan debt is a big one.
Well, don't men have that too?
Men do have student loan debt, but the Yahoo Finance article points out that 63.6% of all student loan debt belongs to women.
Wow, I mean, that can be harder for us to invest and save when you're paying bills every month.
And that's why it might be a good idea to try and set up an income-based repayment plan, because if you are able to lower your payment, you may be able to create space for retirement savings.
Well, that's a great point. And with that, we are out of time. Viewers, if you have any questions about overcoming women's barriers when it comes to saving money, contact us at retirewithbuska.com or call 715-355-4445. We'll be right back with more of Financially Speaking after this.
If you're 59 and a half or have recently changed jobs, now might be the perfect time to consider a 401k rollover. Rolling over your old 401ks could simplify your finances and give you more control from investment options and costs to how and when you make withdrawals. A rollover could give you the opportunity to partner with a financial services professional and tailor your investments to your specific needs, not the company's group plan. Call our office today to schedule your complimentary consultation and see if a 401k rollover is right for you.
With recent market changes, it's understandable that some people are feeling a little anxious about their financial future. That's why now might be a perfect time to review your financial plan. A financial services professional is trained to help you stay focused on the facts, not emotions, when it comes to your strategy. Getting a second opinion today works to ensure your investments are properly positioned to weather market volatility and that you're not taking on more risk than you realize. Let's work to make sure your plan is ready for whatever comes next. Call us today to schedule a complimentary review with one of our financial professionals.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Financially Speaking. We're glad you were able to join us today, and we hope you learned some useful retirement tips along the way.
On today's show, we covered a number of important topics, and hopefully we did so in a manner that was easy for you to understand. This is the same way that we communicate to our clients when we meet with them in person. Remember, with the help of the right financial services professional, you can create a quality retirement, and our team is happy to help. Right now might be a great time to get a second opinion on your current retirement plan. Call us at 715-355-4445 or go to retirewithbuska.com to continue your retirement education, catch up on previous episodes of our TV and radio show, and schedule your complimentary, no-obligation consultation.
If you have any questions or comments about today's show, call us at 715-355-4445 or feel free to send us an email at info@retirewithbuska.com. Join us next week at the same time and same place for another episode of Financially Speaking.